All right, so we got the wiring harness back from the Wire Diet guy. This is what it comes back looking like, all labeled. He pretty much parses out everything you don't need and just leaves you with what you do need. So now what you have to do is take this harness and pretty much connect it into this harness, which still has the stock connector, and then this is the Ron Francis chassis harness, which it will then add into and be part of. So that will be the next step. Now, another issue I've run into is with power steering lines, and that they give you this kit of 2 hoses and then a bunch of fittings. And these fittings they don't give you any instruction as to where they go. But in my research, I have found out that, so I ordered, let's start from that. So to simplify the problem, Maximum Motorsports has a kit that of 2 fittings, these 2 here, that are these 2 fittings here with the O-rings and everything. So that simplifies that. So I don't know if these 2, which I'm guessing they're not the same as these, but I'm gonna have to look at them. And then I will just need to figure out these 3, which I have an idea. There's some diagrams online. And then I will have to connect it to the power steering pump with another fitting. But they don't tell you how to do it in the manual. They just kind of show you that it needs to be done and tell you to connect everything. And they want you to use the stock lines, which I'm not going to do. So yeah, if we get to that point, keep watching, because I'll put in it how I figured out. So, all right, so run you through the kind of installation of the wiring harness that I got back from the guy who wire dieted it, wirediet.com. His company called CBC Tech. His name is Art. And so what he does, so this is the powertrain controller with the connector. So he uses all the stock Ford stuff. And then he separates and labels everything. So you've got A, B, C here. You've got D and E. This is where it comes through the firewall. This is the plate they give you in the Factory 5 kit. I've mounted the computer under the dash because that was the easiest place, because it doesn't really fit here because the heater is going to go there. You got the mass airflow sensor connected. I've got this air intake mounted temporarily. I'll go over that in a second. But he pretty much, this is the big connector for the engine. And I'm gonna, once I get this all running, I'm going to clean it all up and get it kind of where it kind of sits and doesn't move around a lot. And then, so that's the engine harness. This harness goes over to the other side of the dash, where it picks it up, and you've got your OBD2 connector, and then connect this to the crank. So this is the Ron Francis kit. So one of the things that I was very confused about was which wire connects to, when you have to connect it to these wires here to tie it into the Ron Francis kit. And you could go through the wiring diagrams that are in the manual, but I don't think that would be very easy. So, this is, he knows what all of those wires are. He has all the diagrams, so he's labeled it all for me. So I just have to go through and find what wire that's going to connect to that. This is another one he did. This is the O2 harness. So that'll go down to this catalytic converter here. So you can see here, connect to engine harness, which is also part of this main harness here that then goes over there. And then there's also a harness, which is this one. This is D&E, which go down, and I'm going to connect it down to the transmission and stuff. So, and then he's even given me a harness to connect to the fuel pump, but I already have that harness. That came with the Ron Francis kit, so I don't need to do that. But yeah, that's, you know, it's an easier way to get that done, because I don't know what was needed and what was not needed. You might be able to figure it out. I don't know, but that's an easy way to do it. You pay them, and then the computers reprogram, and you don't have to use the passive anti-theft or the PAT system anymore. So that's the other benefit of that way to do it. So yeah, so to go over this intake system, this is what they want you. They give you this really vague picture and this description of what you're supposed to do. I hooked up the stock intake, and it brings it naturally over here. They want you to connect it to back here. I don't really know how you would do that other than to like cut this, maybe turn it so it goes backwards. I don't know. I might try some different things, but we'll have to see what I end up doing. So what I did was, for now, because I don't think it's going to work, you can see it's pretty close to the wheel there. I've just drilled some holes, mounted the bracket they give you to the F panel here, and then that's where, for testing, that's where it's gonna be. So that's it for now. Yeah. Oh, and then power steering wise, this is the other confusing thing. I took Hydrotech is a company. You can buy, you know, like I said in the video earlier, you can buy this Maximum Motorsports kit. That'll be these two fittings, and then you just got to piece together the other fittings that you need for the rest of the power steering. So yeah, there you go. All right, so here we are at the next step of this saga of trying to figure out all the little details to get the engine to run. Last time, I mean the other part of this video, there's been kind of a gap between the beginning of this video and this part of the video, but I think I was working on the Hydroboost stuff, getting it all figured out, waiting on some fittings, which I have received, and I started hooking up some lines. So to go over that process, if you are hooking up Hydroboost, you have these lines coming out of your Hydroboost unit, which is this here. Take all that off, and then you can get fittings, which the sizes are different depending on, and they vary depending on what year Hydroboost unit you have. But Hydrotech braking carries most of the fittings, which most of these, well, actually the only fitting that I ended up purchasing from them is this fitting, because this is the very odd fitting. These other ones are pretty standard. So I purchased this one from them, which made it, because the threads behind there are very fine and small, which is not very common. And then I've added a fitting here, and then a fitting down. I don't know if you can see it, but it's down on the pump there. And then I bought the Maximum Motorsports kit, which replaces the fittings in the steering rack so that you can use 6AN hoses to hook up there. And then, so I made, this hose came with the Factory 5 kit. This hose I made. So I got some PTFE line, so that's just Teflon lined hose. You got to use a Teflon fitting, so keep that in mind. And then I started hooking everything up. I've also remote mounted the reservoir. The reservoir usually mounts here next to the coil there on the driver's side, if you're looking at it from that end. But I made a little bracket, and that mounts to the F panel that's on the driver's side. There's a T fitting down here, and then I have some socketless Aeroquip hosing. That's this black hosing. So it's not as high pressure as this hose, because you don't need it to be. And I have a cooler, an AFCO cooler. That's a finned cooler that is going to replace this cooler, because when, I don't know, I tried to follow the instructions in the manual to hook that up. I couldn't figure it out. So I ordered a just universal cooler because I want to have a cooler. From what I read, you don't need a cooler. Some people say you don't need a cooler unless you're going to track the car. But I'm just going to put a power steering cooler up because one of the failures of the Hydroboost unit is hot cooling. So I'm just going to put it on there and hook all that up. So I'll eventually run another hose from here through the cooler and then to the other part of the rack there. Then I've started to do the radiator and the cooling system. That's been the next step. So I've been working on that, and we'll see. That's how it mounts there in the frame. It looks very different than the one that they have in the manual. Because then this is a Ford radiator. This is like the original one. And then this is the upper mount for the overflow, which I've put on. My kit came with a fan. Which is this fan here, which connects to the Ron Francis chassis harness, which is this, which I might eventually hook up. We'll see. Because I don't think I have this connector anymore. That's on the fan, the stock fan. So, but yeah, that is the next step. I also, the shroud, the original shroud, is a little screwed up. So I might end up mounting this fan because it might be better in the long run. But yeah, so got the overflow semi-mounted there. I still got to finish it up and then do the coolant lines. But yeah, other than that, that is where we are at now. So there it is.